Well, thank you for joining me today. I'm excited to ask you a few questions about the topic, cities. This is our time. Today I have Connor Riffle, SVP of Smart Cities Rubicon. How's it going, Connor?
Doing great, Michael. How you doing?
Good. I'm doing good. I'm excited to ask you a few questions about our topic today. And I'm going to go ahead and jump right in with our first question. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges that cities have faced in maintaining core municipal services over the past few decades? For example, budget cuts, technology constraints, that sort of thing.
Sure. Well, as city leaders know, there is no shortage of challenges when it comes to day-to-day life in cities. And I think, most folks who work in cities or work with cities will appreciate just how hard it is to run a city, especially in the United States. It's a very, very challenging job. And I think we've had a number of factors that have made it even more challenging recently to run a city. I think, for example, it was already really hard to run a city, and then the pandemic came along, and all of a sudden, you had significant hits to your budget. You had a bunch of unplanned expenses. You had social distancing. You had businesses closing. You had restaurants closing. It got a lot more challenging to do that. So it is harder than ever to run a municipality in America, and it behooves us as technology leaders to provide the best technology to make these cities to help these cities run as efficiently as possible. And I think that's part of why this time is so important for cities. We've had historical underinvestment in municipalities in America. We've had, there's been budget cuts. We had the 2008 Great Financial Crisis that made it very, very difficult for cities to operate and to balance their budgets. And then, kind of coming out of that, just as cities were coming out of that, then we were hit with the pandemic. So it's been very, very challenging for cities. Now, that said, this is also a great time of opportunity, and I think with the significant increase in federal dollars coming to municipalities for the first time recently through the Inflation Reduction Act and the American Recovery Act, we have lots of great opportunities to actually build cities that are fit for the future. And the core underpinning of the city of the future is technology. And so that's what we do at Rubicon. That's what we focus on, is creating technologies that help the day-to-day of municipalities run better, run more efficiently, run more effectively, help municipalities deliver core city services that go from being reactive to being proactive, and ultimately creating a better quality of life for the folks that live in the city. Now, let's remember that 80% of Americans live in cities. Cities are critical to the fabric of our day-to-day of life in the United States. We have to make sure these cities run efficiently and effectively. And that's where technology comes in. We can deploy the latest in technology in municipalities to help the folks that are on the front lines doing their job to make these cities run. We can help them do their job more effectively, more efficiently, more safely. And that's what we do at Rubicon.
Awesome, thank you. I mean, you talked a little bit about investing in municipal services, and you talked about some of the technology. Can you share some of the digital solutions that Rubicon has played in evolving route planning for waste collection,
Sure.
specifically like on cost savings and environmental benefits?
Sure. Well, Michael, I saw about a year ago, I read a great headline in Bloomberg. I mean, it was a great headline, but it was a little bit sad. But the headline in Bloomberg News said, "America's cities are running on software from the 80s." And this is true. This is the case. A lot of American municipalities are running on very old school on-premise databases from the 80s or from the 90s that are not cloud-based, they're not modern, but the city's never had enough time or money to make the necessary investment to shift to a modern solution. And this makes running operations in a municipality very, very inefficient. So I get calls all the time. Hey, my municipality is getting too many 311 calls. My municipality has too many jobs to pick up illegal dumping, which really skyrocketed during the pandemic. How do we fix this problem? We've got too much work, not enough employees. How do we make this whole thing work more efficiently? And a core answer is upgrading that technology from the 80s, making sure that America's cities, the lifeblood of America, that we have, our cities have the technology that is the most up to date, that is the most efficient, and that it's going to allow them to do the day-to-day work of delivering core services more efficiently. And a good example of this is solid waste collection. Solid waste collection is a core municipal service that every municipality in America delivers. It's a public health priority. It is the folks that do it are essential workers. We know because we deemed them essential during the pandemic. Folks in solid waste never got any time off during the pandemic. They never got a chance to work from home. They were out there on the front lines every day, making sure that we took the trash that we create every day in our homes and our offices, and we made sure that we got it to an appropriate and safe disposal site. So all that is core to how cities operate. But the way that we've done municipal solid waste collection is pretty old school. Most cities in America still do it with paper. They hand out paper maps to their drivers. They chart their routes on paper. There's nothing wrong with this. This is what's been required, but it's time to change.
Right.
And what Rubicon does and what our technology does is it takes that same service and it allows the city to deliver that same service, picking up the waste, that same core service, they able to deliver the same service and the same outcomes or better outcomes with less cost. And we do that through technology. And one of the great ways that we make these operations more efficient is through routing. Routing is a core part of picking up the trash. If you think about a solid waste collection operation in a city, it's effectively a last mile delivery system, but in reverse. So FedEx, UPS, they're coming to every house to drop off the packages that you order on Amazon. But then your municipality is coming to your house to make sure, and to your door to make sure that package and the trash that is associated with that package gets out of your house and safely to a disposal site or to a recycling facility. So it is a very logistically complex operation to run solid waste collection. Most folks don't appreciate this. They just see that the garbage truck goes up and down the street and things magically disappear. Their trash gets picked up, but it's very complicated. It's very expensive, and it's very dangerous. Solid waste is one of the most dangerous occupations in America. So what we do, and one of the ways that we help is we help cities reduce the amount of miles that they are driving in order to pick up the solid waste. We help them optimize their routes. We help them figure out which days are the best and most efficient days to collect. We help them figure out how they can collect the same number of households with less wear and tear on their vehicles, less miles on the road, fewer incidents that are out there, fewer missed pickups, and just more efficiency in general. So we've helped cities all across the country to reduce the efficiency, or to improve the efficiency of the routes, both in what we call point-to-point collection, which is when you're picking up kind of bulky trash or you're picking up dead animals or illegal dumping, as well as recurring curbside residential service. In the city of Atlanta, for example, we saved the city more than $700,000 a year through helping to make their daily curbside routes more efficient. And in the city of Denton, Texas, for example, we helped the city to save a huge amount of money through deploying route sequencing, turn-by-turn directions. We were able to reduce the average route mileage in the city of Denton by 39 miles across 65 residential routes. This mileage reduction translates to roughly $127,000 every year in fuel savings and 461 tons of CO2 emissions reduced, which is the equivalent of taking roughly 100 passenger vehicles off the road. This stuff matters. There's real savings to be had here, and route optimization is a great place to find it.
Nice. Good, Connor. No, it's exciting and it's interesting. And you started talking a little bit more about numbers. So I want to discuss the power of the data analytics and the real-time monitoring that you're doing. Could you provide a little bit more depth, more insight on how cities have effectively used these tools to improve their services? I know you touched on a little bit of those, but this is exciting stuff. I think sometimes having numbers and data attached to what you're actually doing is so beneficial.
Sure. Well, let's just stick with the city of Denton, Texas. So Denton, Texas, one of the things we do is we put an iPhone or an iPad in every vehicle, okay? And this is one of our great advantages is we don't have to install a bunch of hardware on the vehicles. With this very powerful modern device, we can collect a huge amount of data to help make your trash operation better. So in the city of Denton, one of the things we do is the drivers log exceptions. So they drive their route normally, and as they're driving their route, if they come across an issue that they want to report, whether the trash is not out at a particular home, or maybe the recycling is contaminated, or maybe they can't access a bin because it's blocked by a parked car, something like that. We ask them to note that on the iPhone or the iPad, and that allows the dispatch to collect all this information and then make better decisions about how the route progress is going and whether or not they need to do things like let folks know that they need to stop contaminating their recycling, or maybe they need to make a phone call to let them know, hey, we didn't pick up your trash today because it wasn't out or because it was blocked. So these are the things that help to create a better service, but it all starts with collecting that data. So in the city of Denton, they are excellent at this. In 2021, drivers logged almost 88,000 issues in the year that prevented collection of garbage. And 77% of those were incidences where the resident had not set out their trash bin. And this allows the city of Denton, if there's a phone call and somebody says, oh, you didn't collect my trash bin, city of Denton can actually say, instead of just going back to pick it up and therefore making an unnecessary extra trip, the city of Denton can say, actually, we did not pick up your trash because it was blocked or because it was not out. Therefore, we're going to come back and we'll get you next week. Something like that. Missed pickups, unnecessary go backs, they drive a huge amount of inefficiency in America's solid waste collection operations. And if we can reduce those, we can save these cities a lot of money. And it all starts with that data.
That's it. When you were talking, it's so interesting because I love data and I think it's important to be able to gather that and then be able to tell a story and use those facts like you're doing now. And for some odd reason, with all of that data, you talked about like prevention. And I just thought of the FBI. It's like they are doing all of this work behind the scenes to prevent stuff. And people really don't know that that's happening. And so you're saving and I just so interesting how the city of Denton has been able to leverage that. And so as I'm thinking about this, and the goal is to reduce landfill waste and low carbon emissions through digitizing things. Can you share the strategies on how cities have achieved this? And specifically also, because you talk about technology and integrating it into what cities are doing, how do you teach and how do you show the cities how to use this technology? Would you say that it's not necessarily, I mean, easy, but are cities able to grasp this, and are they seeing a difference in integrating this into their systems?
So let me take the second question first, which is about kind of training and implementation. There is some change management associated with America's cities making this shift, and that change management should not be underestimated. It is difficult to make that transition no technology to technology. And so it's up to all of us, and especially to us, to help support municipalities and departments as they make this transition to technology. And so part of what we do is we have a dedicated training and implementation team. And when we sign a new contract with the city, we send this team. This team is populated with folks that have been training cities for years. Maybe they've worked in a city. Maybe they've worked for a private hauler that's made the transition to digital. But they have the experience to be able to connect with the drivers and actually help the dispatchers and the drivers understand how to make this switch to using technology for your day-to-day. I remember in one city when we came in for the training, they showed us a massive Rolodex that they were still using to keep track of all of their commercial waste customers. This was the largest Rolodex I've seen. It was enormous, and they made notes on all the cards about the commercial, how many dumpsters they had in a particular location. We take that entire Rolodex and that process, and we digitize all of that. And now they're going to find all that in the cloud. They're going to find all that in their browser. And that's a transition that's important to get right, and one that I think we really excel at as we're helping cities make this transition. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the environmental benefit of these operations. So the first piece is efficiency. We have to make sure that these operations are running efficiently, that they are running safely, that they are running sustainably. Again, it is a massive, complex logistical challenge to run a solid waste collection operation. And we need to make sure that the day-to-day goes as easily and seamlessly as possible for the drivers and the dispatchers that are out there every day doing this essential service. There is a significant savings to be had in that efficiency. So I mentioned route optimization, right? You can probably expect to save hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, depending on the size of your city, if you redo your routes, if you are smart about how you optimize your routes. You can reduce missed pickups through better data collection, and you can save your team a bunch of go-backs, which just eats away at the wear and tear on the vehicles and on your team's time, drives up overtime costs. You can save a huge amount of money just on not printing out paper route sheets for the drivers. We give them all their route sheets on the iPhone now or on the iPad, and so they're able to just see that we don't have to print out any sheets anymore. The city of Spokane saved $25,000 a year just on printing costs by shifting to digital. So there are very, very significant savings just on efficiency and allowing us to help you run your operation better on a daily basis. So there are savings there. The other piece where there are savings is kind of thinking about, hey, if I can run my operation more efficiently, what can I redirect some of that money into? And recycling is a really, really interesting area. We saw a lot of curbside recycling be canceled during the pandemic. Cities, because they were under a lot of pressure, they said we can't do recycling anymore. They had a lot of folks that were out, drivers that were out, so they couldn't actually staff a lot of these trucks. So what you can do is you can use the savings from the improvements in efficiency to actually run recycling programs. And those recycling programs can deliver a very, very significant environmental benefit. So when we take a ton of material and we take it to the landfill, it creates methane. Methane is 80 times more powerful than carbon as a greenhouse gas emission. So the emissions from landfill are significantly worse for the environment and specifically for climate change than the emissions associated with, for example, the tailpipe of a car. So recycling, there is a very significant carbon savings associated with recycling. So if you can make sure that your municipality has a recycling program, if you can make sure that your municipality runs that recycling program efficiently so that the contamination is low, folks know what to recycle, you've got efficient routes for your recycling trucks. If you can do all those things, the carbon saving benefit of recycling is very, very significant, especially as compared to other activities. So there is a real benefit to doing some of these emissions. Let me just give you an example from the city of Roseville, California. They are one of our customers, and we help them to with their organics collection. So recycling food waste, right? Together, we helped to plan their routes for these new organic collection routes. And together we diverted 1,819 tons of food waste from the landfill to the composting facility through the course of 2021. This led to over 1,000 metric tons of carbon emission savings because of being able to avoid that methane. So I talked previously about the Denton example. The Denton was able to save about 461 tons of CO2. You can see this the significant savings of in terms of carbon of actually diverting that organic stream away from the landfill and to compost has a very significant carbon savings. More so than you can get on a route optimization, for example. So
great. No, thank you for sharing that. As you were talking about that, I know you mentioned earlier a little bit about the pandemic and the challenges that we face, and although it's been a year or so or two, it really stressed the importance of essential services and how cities and municipalities had to pivot, right? How have these digital systems enabled cities to respond dynamically to these challenges?
Sure. So let me give you a couple of examples. One is when the pandemic happened, a lot of drivers were necessarily calling in sick. And what that meant is a lot of cities realized that had not digitized. What they realized very quickly was that they did not know the routes. The drivers knew the routes because the driver had been doing that route for 30 years. But when that driver called in sick, they had nobody to do that route, and they didn't actually know what the route was. They didn't know what customers were on it. They didn't know the most efficient way to service it. So a lot of cities during the pandemic realized that what they needed is they needed to get routes and customers out of drivers' heads and into a digital platform, which would mean that if they need a backup driver to come in, to do that normal driver's route, it's a very simple process of saying, here are the routes and here are their stops. So digitizing during the pandemic actually became a critical necessity. The cities that had already digitized and were able to more seamlessly move between drivers were in a much better position to ensure that the trash continued to get picked up during the pandemic. The other component of this is turn-by-turn directions. So it's not enough just to know the route and know the stops. New drivers and backup drivers also ideally need to know the most efficient way to drive that route. And the best way to do that is by giving them turn-by-turn directions. If you don't know where to go and you're going to some new friend that you've never been to their house before, you might use Waze or Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever to give you turn-by-turn directions to get there. Solid waste drivers need the same benefit. They need to be able to, when they're running a new route or they're new to the city or new to the route, they need to be able to have turn-by-turn directions that direct them through the most efficient way to route. And we provide that as part of our digitization package. So that's one big part of kind of what we all learned very quickly during the pandemic. We know that this is not going to be the last pandemic. Like, there's going to be other disruptions to service. There's going to be other reasons why drivers can't make it in. So it is incumbent upon every city to make sure that they have a resilient digital infrastructure that will allow them to continue day-to-day operations, even in the face of calamity. Which brings me to my next point, which is climate change is making the storms that we experience in America much, much worse. We're seeing more hurricanes. We're seeing more intense hurricanes. We're seeing more intense snowstorms, more intense thunderstorms, and municipal governments, local governments are on the front lines of responding to these. We had a record number of billion-dollar disasters, natural disasters in America last year. So we know that this is our future, unfortunately. And municipal governments need to make sure that they are ready and resilient to continue servicing and continue delivering on public health needs, even in the midst of these significant disruptions, which we know are coming. So digitization is a core element for cities looking to future-proof and looking to make sure that they are ready and in a position to respond when these inevitable storms and these inevitable natural disasters come for them. So that's why digitization and having that resilient digital infrastructure is so critical for the future.
Right. No, thank you. That's absolutely true. I know even in Texas, I'm in Texas, and a lot of what you just described, I witnessed it firsthand, and it's absolutely true. It brings me to my next question. With the increase of federal government investment in cities, and especially them knowing that they have to so that they can respond to a crisis or just in general in everyday life, what advice do you have for city officials and decision makers on how to best leverage these funds to benefit their services and the community that they serve?
Sure. Well, there's lots of needs, and municipal governments have to make hard decisions about where they're going to make these investment dollars. But I think when I look at the future and I look at just how disruptive it will be, when I look at the pressing priority of climate change, the need to adapt to these storms and to these weather events that we know are coming, when I look at that, I just want to do everything I can to get my city ready to be able to handle that future. So, making sure that you've got the right physical infrastructure in place to be able to handle this future is critical. Being able to deal with flash floods, being able to deal with droughts, being able to deal with very, very hot days, being able to deal with very, very cold days. These are all things that municipalities need to make sure that they're focusing on for the future. And again, that relates to physical infrastructure, but it also relates to digital infrastructure. We now know, thanks to the pandemic, we now know that in order to continue critical operations like a city, like the business of a city, we know we need to have people able to work from home. So every department needs to make sure that they have the ability to log into a centralized cloud-based system and continue to be able to do the work of, for example, in our case of solid waste, dispatching the trucks, making decisions about should this be picked up, should this not be picked up, rerouting trucks if there's a disaster in a particular area and we need to change the routes. All of this is what we provide and what cities need to be able to have for the future. And again, it's not just our department, it's lots of other departments also need the same thing, but the physical infrastructure and the digital infrastructure, I think, are very, very worthwhile investments.
The other thing, we've talked about city leaders and the officials, and I'm sure you work hand in hand with them. But ultimately, we're doing this to make their communities better, specifically to improve the quality of life for the residents in these areas. So how have these efforts improved the quality of life for their residents?
Sure. Well, I think it starts with the point that I've made, which is that waste collection operations deliver a critical public health service for municipalities. If you've ever been in a city where there's been a garbage strike, or you've ever lived in a place where the trash didn't get picked up, it is miserable and it is unhealthy. And cities need to make sure, and residents need to make sure that these garbage collection operations run and run well, so that we don't have public health issues related to trash being on the streets. So that's number one. And again, this often goes unnoticed. So if you see your trash truck driver, wave, give them a tip, say hey, give them a smile, thank them for the service that they deliver in your city, because it is critical to keeping you and your families healthier every day. So that's number one in terms of quality of life. Number two is they provide a service that is not just important for public health, but they also provide a service that is convenient for you, which is that they come and they pick up your garbage at your door. It's very expensive to do that. It's very dangerous to do that. And yet these solid waste workers do that every single day. They come and they pick up, they come to your door and they pick up your garbage. And that means that you don't have to take your garbage to the dump. It means you don't have to take your recycling to the facility. They come to your curbside and they pick it up. So the convenience of making sure that your solid waste operation is running well is really, really important. And then I would say that when it comes to things like snow removal and street sweeping, these are also, critically important in the case of disasters, but also directly relevant for public health. Street sweeping, keeping the streets swept, is really, really important for the health of our rivers and our lakes. And cities need to provide that service to their municipalities. Street sweeping also reduces instances of PM10, PM5, PM2.5, which are pollutants that can affect your day-to-day health, like can create incidences of asthma and poor air quality. So street sweeping provides a really important public health service as well as something that's very convenient for making sure that that your street is healthy. So there's lots of different ways that these day-to-day core services deliver better quality of life. And there's a reason that they are core services. And the reason they are core services is that they deliver that public health necessity and they deliver that improved quality of life.
Awesome, thank you. Well, just as we're getting ready to wrap up, I really am inspired by what we've discussed today. And I get to have more insight on this because of the work that I get to do. But just as like a citizen, like what would be my call to action? Like how can the public get involved in supporting these initiatives to improve their municipal services and to just kind of help their own community? I think sometimes we want to know, how can we help? How can we be a part of that conversation? So what role could a citizen have in to play in this process?
Sure. So I think one is to make sure you're talking to your leaders in your local government about your wishes and your desires. Attend public meetings, attend city council hearings. Make sure that you are advocating and you are a voice advocating to strengthen the ability of the local government to respond to improving trash collection or increasing recycling. So that's a really important one. Second one is many cities have recycling ambassador programs. So you can become a recycling ambassador. You can make sure that your neighbors are recycling well. You can commit to helping folks understand how to recycle. Most folks are happy to recycle and want to recycle well, but may not understand the specific local limitations that are required by your jurisdiction. So you can become an expert in that, become a recycling ambassador. Look to see if your city has a chapter of Keep America Beautiful, which is a civic organization often associated with the municipality that helps to improve recycling infrastructure and reduce litter in America's cities. So these are a few ideas to make sure that you're advocating to make sure that your city is using the most up-to-date technology, that your city is engaged in things that are going to help your day-to-day, your quality of life, and also help the men and women that are on the front lines of delivering these services.
Awesome. That's a great. Well, thank you so much, Connor. I really appreciate your time, and I'm glad that we were able to discuss this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the time and appreciate the wide-ranging discussion. So thank you for making time and for being here to discuss.
Awesome.